And I disagree with a lot of the things he has to say. I think he has more of a negative viewpoint. And my whole message is that millennials aren't the problem. They just expose all the problems.
Welcome to Men of Abundance, the podcast for those looking to level up their lives by hanging out with some of the greatest leaders and established professionals in our community, living a life of integrity, honor, and the abundance mentality. Prepare to pay it forward with your host, former Army medic turned lifestyle entrepreneur, Wally Carmichael.
What is going on, Men of Abundance? I am Wally Carmichael, your founder and host of the Men of Abundance podcast, the Pay It Forward community, proving to you that you can, in fact, live a life of abundance and prosperity in family, faith, finances, and fitness. And guess what? You don't even have to be a millionaire to do so. It all starts with a mindset and the decision to live your best life. Once you have that and you start being grateful for everything you have in your life right now and then start paying it forward, you're on your journey to living your best life and living your life of abundance. And what we're doing here on Men of Abundance is sharing with you conversations with men and women who are in fact living a life of abundance, paying it forward, and sharing their kick in the gut moments with you, and then sharing with you what they learned from that experience so that you can gain from their insight. And since a huge element of living a life of abundance is to pay it forward, I'm going to afford you the opportunity to be abundant in your life today by paying it forward and sharing Men of Abundance with everyone you come in contact with. This simple action of paying it forward is going to make you feel amazing. And for those who you're going to share it with, they will thank you. So feel free to share the website, menofabundance.com. Share this episode on your favorite podcast player. Share it wherever it is that others are paying attention to you. Listen, I greatly appreciate you for that. And those who find the episode that you shared are going to thank you as well. And if you have like 2 minutes, go leave a rating and review on iTunes. I love reading those because it gives me some feedback and lets me know if I'm making an impact or not, what I need to change, what you feel I need to change, and I'll take that into consideration. I seriously will. Now, our featured guest today is national bestselling author of The Millennial Whisperer, which was released in February 2019 and quickly became the #2 bestselling book at Barnes & Noble. His dynamic approach to attracting and motivating the next generation in the workplace has had him featured in Forbes, Fast Company, Fox TV, Cheddar News, and more. Chris is also a partner at 22 Squared, a full-service advertising agency based out of Atlanta, Georgia, where he oversees content marketing and partnerships as well as the employee engagement consulting division. Chris has held many different roles over the 10 years he's been there and now focuses his time building new offerings and motivating the millennial generation in the workplace. Men of Abundance, it is my pleasure to introduce you to Chris Tuff. Chris, welcome to Men of Abundance, brother. How you doing?
Doing awesome. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. Where are you at in the world?
I'm in Atlanta, Georgia.
Atlanta, Georgia. I dig Atlanta, man. I had a chance to go there a couple of times. I'd spend about a week there when I was in the Army many, many years ago. Well, I was in the Army 4 years ago, but my opportunity to go to Atlanta every year for a week to the reserve conference out there was pretty cool. And I had to work about an hour a day, but back then it was like, no, you got to stay for the whole week. I'm like, bummer.
Yeah,
okay.
I love
I'm going to
it.
go check out Buckhead and all these other cool places.
Totally. Well, it's changed a lot. Like, I mean,
sure.
As Tampa is changing a lot, we actually have, our ad agency has offices in both Atlanta and Tampa. So we get to see both. I get to see both those cities transform. So
yeah, both great cities. Absolutely. Yeah. And I've heard that Atlanta, I just recently talked to somebody else who was in Atlanta, and it's changed so much over the years. I know they changed Buckhead back it was early 2000s when I was there, and I went to Buckhead during the day, and it's all metropolitan, people jogging, and it was just beautiful. And then I was like, I'm gonna go check this place out at night. Somebody told me, go down there at night. You'll see, it was like Girls Gone Wild, man. It was out of control. I was like, this is not the same place.
It's changed a lot.
That's what I said. Yeah, that's what people said. It's completely different. So, brother, I'd like to start out with an attitude of gratitude, man. What do you have to be grateful for today?
Well, so one of the best things that my friend Tommy taught me was that all great foundations are built on gratitude. And so I actually do a gratitude journal, 5-minute journal every day. So I do it in the morning and at night.
Sweet.
So, I mean, I can say today it was, I have gratitude for my 2 daughters and my wife. I have gratitude for my health. I'm actually reading an amazing book called Hope Heals right now that talks about a woman who actually met on a radio show recently. She has a stroke 11 years ago. She had a 6-month-old child, blah, blah, blah. It talks about amazing things like this idea of post-traumatic growth, which is the opposite of post-traumatic stress. But anyways, without digressing too much, health is my number 2. And number 3 is my ability to wake up and work out at 5:30 in the morning. Those are my 3 big things.
That's awesome. We're going to get much more into that here in just a minute. But
Yep.
Post-traumatic growth, I don't know where I first heard that term, but I'm working with a group of veterans, and we are working on doing some executive training and working with veterans as well, and specifically working on building resiliency and preventing PTSD, which I always hated the PTSD term. And a while ago, I heard, and I used that term, post-traumatic growth, within this group. They're like, "Oh my God, that's the best thing ever!" So they gave me a bunch of credit for it. I was like, no, I can't take credit for it, brother. I know I didn't come up with that, but I just had to change it.
I'd never heard of it until I was on this show, and he started, basically, I mean, that's exactly what I'm talking about. It's that stuff. Choosing light over dark is not an easy thing. And to be able to see things in a new light, and it's amazing. I love it.
Yeah, it's all about language. I mean, it's all about, I have written on my board right here, as a matter of fact, physiology, focus, and language. It's all Tony Robbins stuff that he shares that he didn't, some of the stuff he pioneered and came up with, but most of it not. He learned it from other people as well. But the bottom line is when I hear somebody say, well, my depression won't allow me to, I was like, wait a minute, it's not yours. You don't own it. It's a condition that you have that you're dealing with right now, but doesn't have to be there forever. And if you own it, then it's like your thumb.
Exactly.
That's yours. Don't own it, or you never, unless you don't want to get rid of it.
100%. 100%.
It's all about language, man. So, we're going to get much more into what you're doing. I really dig what you have going on, man. And I'm just excited about getting into this conversation. And I've already talked about a little bit about you professionally, but here on Men of Abundance, we like to get to know the man behind the abundance. So if you would, how would you describe yourself?
So, I talk about this as I open up the book, but I'm one of the more passionate people you meet, and I'll hit things as I'm talking about these many passionate things. Right now, my biggest passion tirades are around, what technology is doing to our culture and what that means, and obviously how to better manage millennials. But I like to describe myself as I have a passion disorder, which my brother diagnosed me with because I get so excited about the things that I'm talking about. But, the other piece is that I'm relentless with once I get something in my head, I just do not stop until that thing is done. And, my whole platform is built on the idea of how do we bring more empathy and love into our world and more human to human connection. And the book, The Millennial Whisperer, that I wrote is all about how we can do that within our corporations. But outside of that, it's what I try to bring home to my 2 daughters and my wife. It's what I'm trying to do with the men around me. I created a group called The Exchange, which actually inspired my book, which is all about helping men become better men and to help, show people what vulnerability looks like and walking the talk. So, that's what gets me fired up.
Yeah, I dig it. And I dig the passion behind it. And that's totally what I got from just looking into what you're doing, some of the videos that I've seen. And, the one sheet went way beyond that because I do stalk people a little bit before I get them on the show, just so I can be a little bit more intelligent about what you have going on. And it's really neat. I'm going to ask you a question specifically that I saw this video a while back, somebody who you may have heard of, Simon Sinek. And he's talking about millennials. And I had always followed Simon, and my personal views about him is one thing. He's got a lot of great points in leadership, having never really led anything that I can tell, quite frankly. But that's not to take away from his information. But when he did this video and a conversation about millennials, I sat back and I was like, I don't buy that.
I didn't buy it.
Yeah. Share your thoughts on that.
And so I was when someone shared that with me, I think I was almost I was done with the book, but it hadn't published yet. And I disagree with a lot of the things he has to say. I think he has more of a negative viewpoint. And my whole message is that millennials aren't the problem. They just expose all the problems. And so a lot of people will read this book and say, I use the example, Mike Hibison, who's a senior executive at Home Depot. He's one of the stories in the book. He read the book 4 times and he turned to me and he said, Chris, I'm ready to meet with you. I've read it 4 times. I'm like, oh, geez. So I met him for breakfast. And I'm like, okay, here comes. I was preparing myself for like critical feedback. And
just for reference, what's his age? What category does he sit in?
So he's right in the Xer. He is just turned 50.
Okay, so he's right where I'm at.
Yep, so just turned 50. Mm-hmm. And so we grab a seat, and he looks around and he whispers to me. He goes, Chris, I just figured out after reading your book, I'm kind of like a millennial. And I'm like, don't worry, Mike, no one's going to hear you. And he goes, millennial's much more of a mindset than anything else. And I said, exactly. That is exactly what I'm talking about. And so, if you look at a lot of the things out there that are being said about generations and understanding generations, take all that stuff out of the picture because everything has changed. And what's changed is really what makes this generation 2 very different generations. We're talking about people that are born between 1981 and 1996. That is a massive group of people. And so the first thing I do is I break millennials into 2 different groups: older millennials, Oregon Trail millennials, because they played Oregon Trail in some form of their elementary upbringing to understand computers, and then younger millennials, which I call Snapchat millennials, because they were given a Snapchat account at age 13 on an iPhone. Mm-hmm. And what makes these 2 very different generations is that 1, when they adopted technology and social media, and then 2, when the recession of 2008 either hit them or their parents for the younger millennials. And so it's with that kind of mindset and viewpoint that I bring this book into the world, saying that I think I sign all my books, the best is yet to come. And that's what my whole message is about. And if you look at Simon Sinek's whole thing on millennials, it doesn't take any form of that. And so that's what we'll talk about, hopefully a little bit, and where I'll get all fired up about some of the points that I'm trying to make and trying to impact within our organizations.
Yeah, I totally get that. And guys, I might put that video down into the show notes, but if not, or rather you don't want to go there or not, just search Simon Sinek and millennials. It'll pop up. I'm absolutely positive of it. But I've said this often, and tell me your thought process, and you kind of touched on this. I think we're on the same thought process here. I don't subscribe to the whole idea that the generation gap and stereotyping based off of, like millennials, Gen X's, and they're all this way and these are all this way. The only thing that's obvious is the age gap.
Exactly.
Because I know people that I personally grew up with that act just ridiculous and that stereotypical millennial thought process.
Right.
But then I know kids, and I call them kids, but I know like my boys. I mean, they're a lot like me because they grew up with me and they've been around me a lot. They got their differences and stuff. And I just see my point is I just see these mannerisms and these thought processes across the board. It just has to do more with how you were brought up.
100%. And, what we need to stop doing is using millennials as a synonym for inexperienced and young. Mm-hmm. And guess what? Millennials are both inexperienced and young. So let's stop using as a synonym for that and classifying them as a whole. And instead, look at them. We finally have a generation that is willing to walk the talk and quit their jobs if we don't meet some of these things in the middle. And does it mean that they're all the way right? No. Does it mean that we need to start adapting if we want to survive? Yes. And that's what this book's all about.
Yeah. Well, on the other side, I know older people that are experienced. And for those who aren't looking, I'm using air quotes, but they're idiots. And age doesn't equal experience in any particular thing other than their life. And that may or may not benefit me in some way, in the way that I need it. On the other hand, I've talked to younger guys. In fact, I had these guys contacting me on a regular. They're like, you need to check out our coaching and you need to check this out. And we're doing this on LinkedIn and we're doing this over here and we're doing this over there. I'm like, these young punks, what the hell can they teach me? Right. In this regard, in an area that I'm working in. And when I got on the phone with two of them, I was like, oh my God, these guys are freaking brilliant.
That's awesome.
And they're 20 years younger than I am. Easy.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
And so, you just got to open your mind, guys. That's all we're saying here is everybody has value to add, regardless of their age and even regardless of their experience. Now, I will say that I do have a hard time if somebody's been married 3 years and they want to do couples counseling with me and my wife that's been married for 27 years. I might have to have, consider that, but I'll keep an open mind and move forward.
There you go. I like it.
So one of the questions I like to ask is a kick in the gut moment, because regardless of age and experience, we all have kick in the gut moments. And it's what we do with that information that changes the trajectory of our life, either keeps us down or just pushes us and makes us passionate about something. So if you would, share a kick in the gut moment with us and really make us feel that.
Sure. And by the way, I love the format of this podcast, and I love your questions. And you look at the hero's journey, which is a lot of speeches and books will follow that. But one of my big things, and I start the book this way, is what my rock bottom looked like, and that was 2.5 years ago. I'd lost sight of what was most important to me. I had on the outside, I was killing it. I was the youngest partner of my ad firm, 22 Squared. We have offices in Tampa and Atlanta. I was going to lunches with Sheryl Sandberg and traveling all over the world. But inside, I was really struggling. And so for me, I think everyone's rock bottom looks different. But for me, I have a pretty high self-awareness, and I asked our CEO, Richard Ward, I called him and I said, listen, I'm reevaluating a lot of things and I'd like to take a month off just to think about things because something's off. And he granted that and was super supportive. And it was during that time that I really took it down to the studs and made some very big decisions. And one of those was doubling down on my own family, my two daughters who are 7 and 9, and my wife, and making them a priority in my life again. And the other thing I did was I recalibrated what my own metric of success was. And my old metric of success was beating my brothers at the game of life. It was just beating them. And let me tell you something, that's not a great metric to have as a success piece. And I changed it to that. And I promised myself and my wife that success will be accountable on a daily basis. When my head hits the pillow, I will ask myself, was I successful today? And what is success to me now is the amount of energy put into a day and impact made. And that's it. Mm-hmm. And I've gone to bed for the last 2.5 years successful. And it was around that time, after changing those things, what I found was that instead of being the point of the arrow and instead of being the Don Draper, if you will, of our ad agency, for anyone that watched Mad Men, I wanted to coach and empower this next generation, or basically my team, which ended up being the next generation, 30 millennials on my team. And it was 7 months into that I went on a men's retreat, because I created kind of this men's group, which was a total experiment. And because I wanted to be a resource, not only within my organization, with my wife and children, but also for other men, to help men become better men. And so we were on this executive retreat, and I introduced myself, and I kind of had a hard time describing what I did anymore, because I was no longer the business development guy. I was no longer the digital guy. And so I was like, well, I'm kind of like the Millennial Whisperer. And my friend Tommy Breedlove, well, now closest friend,
Tommy's awesome, man. He's been on my show. I did Tommy.
Yeah, and I think we found him because of your show. So it was around that time we were listening to some podcast. It was me and my friend Cody, and we were like, Cody reached out to me. We said, who is going to lead this executive retreat that we're doing? And it was a group of 14 guys, total experiment. in North Georgia. And he said, well, I just listened to this podcast. And I'm almost positive it was your podcast that he was listening to. He's like, this guy, Tommy, would be perfect for it. And so we used him to facilitate this trip. And, after I introduced myself as the Millennial Whisperer, Tommy, with his deep voice and big blue eyes, he turns to me next to the fire. He goes, you better write that book. And I was like, what book, Tommy? He goes, The Millennial Whisperer. If you don't write it, I am. I'm like, Tommy, dude, there's no way I can write a book. He was like, let me introduce you to my friend Nick Pavlitas. He's a great editor and could be a good person for you to talk to. And then the rest was history. That was 18 months ago. I wrote the book in 7 months. We published in 14. We sold 40,000 since then, and we're subsequently changing the world. So here we go.
Man, that is an excellent story, and it totally sounds like Tommy for sure, to throw that out there. Guys, he was episode 146, so go to menofabundance.com/146 and check out that conversation to see what a dynamic dude this is. But yeah, thanks for sharing that. It's just such an amazing story.
And Tommy wrote the foreword of my book and also recorded the audiobook. I had him record because if I had to record my whole thing, I needed his voice in it. But I'm actually writing the foreword of his book, which will be coming out, which is called Legendary, which is all about how to become a legendary man. And it is awesome. So that I just wanted to plug that.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
And I might have seen you, in some of the posts, because Tommy was posting about it. He was at a men's retreat.
Yeah.
And he was just having a blast, man. I was digging, just watching it all unfold, and it was really cool. I dig that kind of stuff. And guys, if you ever get an opportunity, my goodness. I mean, some of you guys just have to sell it to your spouse or to your significant other, because some of them are telling you to go. If they hear wind about these men's retreats that are just life-changing, life-altering, definitely take the opportunity to experience that.
It will
change your life.
It is fascinating, though. We Tommy and I actually, once again, we do a lot together. I was actually just had a coffee with him doing some networking stuff, but we shared dinner with Colin O'Brady, and through a mutual friend of ours, we ended up having dinner with Colin, and I think a lot of us have seen Colin at different speaking things, and Colin, for those that don't know, was the first person to go across Antarctica unsupported, carrying a sled behind him. I mean, he's got 5 different world records. He's got the Explorers Grand Slam, one of the most inspiring people you'll ever meet. And, he's on Ellen and all this stuff. And so sitting with him, he made a great point where we started talking about investing in ourselves. And, what he brought up was how few people are actually willing to invest in a coach or invest in a retreat or some of these things that are the most essential pieces of our fabric. And we say what's most important to you as a man or just as a father or whatever. And we'll say my wife, my kids, and myself and all these things. And then it's the first things we sacrifice. And that's what Colin was bringing up in this whole thing, that you've got to constantly be investing in yourself if you want to keep your game up. So anyways,
yeah, no, for sure. No, I mean, that's spot on though, man. I mean, first off, Colin's heart is woodpecker lips. And two, if somebody like that, it always blows my mind when I'm talking to somebody and, you have all these high performers, and even coaches have coaches, and high performers have coaches on top of coaches for every aspect of their life or various aspects of life. And if they're doing something new, then they hire another coach or mentor, whatever the case may be. And then you're talking to somebody who wants to be at that level and says, okay, you need to hire, find a coach, find somebody who can resonate with. I don't need a damn coach.
Totally.
Okay.
Totally.
You're missing what we're saying here. And it's, it was explained to me this way. Going up through school, if you were in sports, you had coaches. You had a lineman, the front line coach. You had the defensive coach, offensive coach, passing coach, catching coach, you name it, batting coach. But people stop having coaches after school. They don't have life coaches. They don't have business coaches. They don't have, a resume coach. They don't have any of this stuff. And I'm wondering, why is this not working for me?
Totally.
So, man, and here's the thing. The other thing I wanted to bring up about what you're talking about in your stories, you're talking about how you go to bed successful every single day. And I will submit, based on the activities that you're doing, you go to bed with full fledged abundance in your life, because to me, success is about me. It's about me fulfilling my goals, dreams, and desires, and fulfilling my needs. Abundance is taking it a step forward. And you can also say significance is taking it that step forward. And it doesn't take much more to pass that on to others, to pay it forward, and to share that knowledge, share that information, share your time, treasures, and talents with others, share your resources with others. That's abundance, taking it a little bit further. So if you would, how have you been? You already wrote the book and done many of the things so far. How has you paying it forward? How's that made a difference in other people's lives? Can you share any good news stories?
Yeah. So I will say, people will ask, like, what's been the most fulfilling thing since publishing the book? And it's not the bestseller recognition, national bestseller recognition, or sure, some of the media stuff has been neat and whatever, but it's been some of the messages that have come back. I had, one of the big things, and I'm very upfront with it in the book, but as I was going through my rock bottom, I took it down to the studs, and one of the big decisions I made was to quit drinking. And I had someone reach out recently after reading the book, and they said, you inspired me to look at my life. I don't know whether or not that they quit drinking. I'm not here to judge those that do or do not. But for me, it was a key element to clearing and dissecting. I say it was like my life was like a soup before rock bottom. And so I had to kind of extract all the different ingredients, and for me, drinking was one of those. So I had someone reach out and say that I inspired them to rethink that. And I think practicing vulnerability in the book itself, you look at that, how it translates as leaders, and what this next generation is not only looking for in their leaders, but they're expecting from their leaders. It's walking the talk, and one of the other things I talk about in the book is like support people's side hustles. So everyone on your team, you got to support the side hustle. I'm like, this book was my side hustle, and now it's my full-time hustle. And so it is being able to, what's the greatest kind of things? It's the messages, it's the emails, it's the notes that are starting to come in. But it's also like when for the first time in my life, I come home and I don't really know when I'm working or not. I'm hanging out with you, Wally, and I'm working right now. How cool is that? And I'm talking about how we're going to change the world for the better. When your passion and your profession and your purpose all overlap, it's a beautiful thing. But it's also dangerous, because my wife says sometimes I never stop working. But I'm like, isn't that kind of the great part? We'll go on a date tomorrow night, okay?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I will say, having been married as long as I have, and having been in a situation where I would literally come home from work, my day job, and go do something with my side hustle, literally knocking on doors, prospecting, doing various things, you name it, and then come home and basically read some more, do something else on the computer, whatever, and really was not spending time with the family. You got to pay attention to that.
100%.
Yeah. So,
and you got to learn how to unplug. I mean,
yeah, you do.
You have to.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And that's another part of the whole abundance mindset and family, faith, finances, and fitness. Having it all together. It's never a perfect balance. It's always going to be a counterbalance. When you're focusing on a book, the family's got to understand, hey, listen, I'm focusing on the book and we're going to get this time back. But we got to get this done so that we can go do this type of thing. As long as you have that conversation.
100%.
Yeah, absolutely. So, some of the things that you talk about, I was very interested in, like 12 things every company should know about motivating millennials. What are you doing there?
So I like to break it down, and I want people to be able to, okay, if they're listening right now, what is it that I'm going to do different today? So I think 12 is a little much, but how I would break it down is, I would say, as leaders, right? There's certain things that millennials, statistically speaking, according to the 2018 Deloitte Millennial Survey, there are certain things that they're expecting from you as an organization. And the first thing is no different than any other prior generation. It's money. It's money and benefits. Where it starts to get a little different from those things that they're looking for from the organization, they want a good culture, a company culture. And I can talk a lot about what makes a good culture, but I think
Mm-hmm.
great culture is just a byproduct of great leadership. You don't need the beautiful, the kegs or the ping pong tables or the brand new office or the full-time barista to make a good culture. You don't need all that stuff. It starts with head and heart. But the another thing that they're looking for from the organizations is work flexibility. I mean, cell phones changed everything, and so you'll hear time and time again that we finally have a generation that wants to work from sometimes home if they need to. And so, put that aside, though. Most of my emphasis is around us as leaders. So how can we become not only better leaders, but also better humans? And so if you look statistically speaking, what millennials are looking for from their leaders are inspirational leadership. They're looking for transparency. They're looking for autonomy, and they're looking for real purpose. And that purpose, your organization should represent something more than just a bottom line or a profit or a stock ticker. And it should be creating a bigger impact outside of your own walls. And if you don't have it for this next generation, good luck with Z, because they're requiring it as a part of the kind of job search and what they're going into. And so we have Gen Z just now starting to graduate from college. But so you look at what they're looking for from their leaders, and the book really focuses on, all right, let's think about how we organize our companies differently. Let's think about maybe pairing up the order person with the inspirational leader person instead of asking someone to be all things to all people. Let's put some things in place where people can create a side hustle while they're working at your organization as they're trying to figure out their purpose. And so, I also have the other side of it, which is I think our role as leaders is also to teach this generation some of the facts of life that are a new reality. And I think social media changed everything, not just for this generation, but also within ourselves. And in the book, I call it the Pinterest station of a generation, where it's like every single moment, it's exhausting. Take the first day of school. You look at your news feeds and it's like Abigail on her first day, and she's holding this beautiful chalkboard with handwritten stencils of her teacher's name, her favorite food, and it's exhausting. And a lot of my friends are young parents, and everyone's kind of putting all of this effort into creating these perfect lives. Yeah. And one thing I tell my group is, one, stop comparing your insides to other people's outsides. I bring in a mindfulness coach in once a month to help, really teach us to be in the moment. But I also introduce them to my 70-30 rule. And my 70-30 rule is 30% of life sucks. 30% of life is going to be hard. 30% of your job is going to suck. 70% should fuel you up, fire you up, and keep you going. And, unfortunately, we all suffer from this grass is always greener on the other side complex, and especially with social media. And you look at statistically, this generation, millennials, and I think we'll see it a little bit less in Gen Z, but they're popping around jobs all the time, much more than previous generations, because it's kind of this pursuit of perfection. And I say that life should be a ruthless pursuit of passions, and we should move around and continue to fuel those things. But that doesn't mean that you can't fuel them within your four walls here. So that's my quick tirade on some of the elements within the book. But I mean, it's how can we create practical, tactical things that we can introduce to our organizations that are all built on massive amounts of data that I used through one of my good friends at Vanderbilt to give me all this data from many different sources.
Yeah. There's so much we could unfold there, but one thing I do want to touch on specifically is one of the last things you just said there is about passion. And I don't always subscribe to the idea that you can turn your passion into an income opportunity, because it's just not true across the board. But that's not the point. Everybody wants to connect their passion or have this conversation about connecting passion to money, but it doesn't have to be connected to money. Mother Teresa changed the world. and she made no money doing it. Whereas Bill Gates changed the world. And, oh, by the way, he made a buttload of money doing it.
Totally.
So, and you got everything in between.
Yep.
So as long as you're doing something that's passionate and fulfills you, it doesn't have to make money, but you do have to find a little bit of passion in what is paying the bills. And if anything, it's paying the bills so that you can do your passion.
100%. And I mean, I think it's also why I say, when you're supporting people's side hustles, those side hustles can be altruistic in nature. It can be giving back to a community. I use the example of someone on our team, Kevin is his name, and he donates his 10% of his time to Camp Twin Lakes, which is a camp for terminally ill. Basically all different types of kids with different diseases. And each camp is a different disease. Camp Sunshine is one of the most famous ones. But that's one example. Another example is a woman on my team who wanted to start her own clothing line. And so it was more entrepreneurial, and I helped her. And after about 7 months, she quickly realized, 1, it's a very competitive market. 2, it's really hard to create a clothing line. And 3, it takes a lot of work. And that, I don't know exactly what that changed with her, but a lot of people feel like they have to move or leave their job in order to pursue, or to your point, figure out whether or not their passions and making money can collide. And so this alleviates some of that stress, I think, and also gives them a little bit of the freedom to truly explore those passion areas and make it a part of their everyday, because we all know that the job's not going to be perfect. We all know that we're going to have down days. And so on those down days, what's going to fuel them? I say side hustles.
Yeah, well, absolutely. I mean, I do this podcast for free.
Yeah.
I mean, it turned into a coaching business, but I don't get paid from the podcast. And there's parts of this podcast, this part I absolutely love. There's other parts that I kind of was intrigued at first because it was new technology and new to me. But at this point, over 2 years in, I don't like editing anymore. So I'm going to hand that over to somebody else because I just can't stand it anymore. Yeah. But other than the fact I get to go through and listen to the conversation again, which is awesome. But one of the things that you bring up too is, and it touches on the whole exploring the passion projects outside of the work. And you mentioned 2 things that was intriguing to me is Gmail and Google Maps. What has that got to do with the exploring passion projects?
So if Google has this thing called their 20% rule, and their 20% rule is that 20% of all Google employees' time can be put towards a passion project. And if you look at a lot of these things that have graduated from, let's not forget, Google started out as just a search engine. That's it. Mm-hmm. And you look at them now and they're building phones. They're doing these things that are way outside of where their original kind of core competency were. A lot of those things, Gmail and Google Maps, are products of actually people pursuing their 20%. And Google allocates 20% of all their employees' time to pursue these things. And if you look at both those examples, those came out of the 20%. It was people that were interested in these things outside of just search engine optimization and being a search engine, and created something new. And I think that is more. Facebook has a program that not many people know about, but a lot of my friends are at Facebook or have been at Facebook, called Fuel. And it's even less stringent than, there are less rules, if you will. It's more open-ended, where people can just take, I think it's 10% of their time and donate it to whatever it is. It could be writing a book. It could be donating their time to a nonprofit. It could be almost anything that just fuels you up. And so I like using those as examples of people are like, oh, well, what's the ROI of this? And it's like, well, first of all, they're going to stay. So let's use that. But then you look at some of the most innovative aspects of some of these companies, they came out of these types of programs.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense to me because my coach and mentor, quite frankly, Carl Bryan, says that systems stifle creativity. And he gets a lot of kickback on that. And because everybody's like systems. And you got the whole Mike Michalowicz idea from E-Myth. And it's like, yeah, systems are great. That's what built McDonald's. And that's a good product. But when you're here, well, I don't know if it's a good product, it's a good business model. But that, like Google and Facebook and other things like that, if you have such stringent systems, then you're really stifling creativity within the organization. And one person that I know gets this, because I follow him a lot business wise and personally, is Richard Branson.
Yep.
In his organizations, he has no vacation system.
No.
You take vacation when you feel like taking vacation. You got to get your work done. That's his metric. You get your work done. I don't care where you're at. Get your work done. The projects done that are asked of you and you say you're going to do. And, oh, by the way, he also encourages them, I think actually ensures that they give back somehow within the community.
Yep.
Which is extremely important as a human being. It's another thing that Chick-fil-A does. Chick-fil-A does the same thing, similar to that. I don't know about the vacation part, but definitely building them up as humans, as people in community, and giving back to the community.
What I think, Richard's a great example of it. I had the opportunity at a much younger age. I was actually still in college. I had an opportunity to stay with him and his family for a week in Necker Island, as I was actually just teaching windsurfing down there, and ended up getting to know Sam and Holly, his kids, really well. And he invited us over, and then I just stayed the week with him because I thought I could probably learn something from Richard Branson.
Right, yeah.
But he walks the talk. I mean, and it comes down to it, essentially what this whole thing is about, what my book, which is, how do we bring more connection and more empathy? There's no more, when you're talking to Richard, he actually wants to know what's happening with you, even though he's a billionaire. He has this ability to connect, and also this empathy that is unbelievable, and that trickles through all of his organizations that he runs. And you look at the elements of this book that I'm trying to change our organizations around. I think the ones that are doing it right are the ones we're talking about. Most are not, though. Most are not doing it right. And I think there's this idea within our corporations that, one, like, we can't be friends, quote unquote, with any of our employees. And the truth of the matter is that the millennials in this next generation, they don't delineate between them. They're expecting connection from you. And so I say follow all. One of the things I put in the Millennial Whisperer was follow all of your employees on social media. And if that's awkward to you as a person, then maybe you should look closer at what your relationship looks like. And it was funny. I was talking to a person that runs a very large organization recently, and he pulled me aside. He goes, "Chris, I'm not posting a bunch of my personal stuff on social media. I'm just not doing it." I said, "They don't want you to do that. You know what they care about? They care about you following them. And when they come in on a Monday, you can say something relevant, like that, everything from that concert that you went to, or that Habitat for Humanity build that you did, whatever. That is creating connection, genuine connection." Mike Hibison in the book, who's an executive at Home Depot, he gives his people in their one-on-ones the option to talk about work or talk about life. And 80% of the time they talk about life. Is there an ROI to that conversation? Absolutely, because with connection comes loyalty. With connection comes more drive and motivation, et cetera, et cetera. And I know I got on these kind of passion tangents, so I apologize.
No, I dig it, man. And I want to point something out, because I do have a lot of veteran followers. And being in the Army for 25 years, I saw 25 years worth of evolution. And people think, well, it's such a stringent system. And it is. When I was in the 82nd Airborne Division as a young non-commissioned officer, I was not allowed to go even eat lunch with the junior enlisted, the E4s and below, specialists, privates, and so on. As I became a leader and I became a first sergeant, I would follow some of my soldiers, any soldiers that had it open at Facebook at the time. I would follow them, and I could see what they were doing over the weekend and with their free time. It did give me a better connection with them. I did not, interact with them on the platform, but they knew I was there. It kind of, I don't know, they kind of watched their P's and Q's a little bit, I guess, maybe too. But the culture within the military is one that specifically, it's even more so in the Navy. Enlisted doesn't even talk to officers, and junior enlisted definitely do not talk to senior enlisted unless spoken to, Otherwise, that's just a no-no. It just doesn't happen.
Right.
And it's true in other armies too. I've worked with over 20 other armies as well, militaries. It's true in that regard as well. But I've found that when I was able to have a more personal connection with them, and that's why we try to do these organizations and go out and have fun together without alcohol. And you do kind of have a better, people will work more for you than do the work because they have to.
When I think,
sense?
yeah, absolutely. And I think if you look at the military as an example, they do a lot of things well, and I recognize and will bring up the military for rewards and recognition. And you look at this need for rewards and recognition. And one of the things I say, and a lot of times, is that as a leader today, especially with millennials or Gen Z, if when your head hits the pillow, you're not utterly exhausted from heroing, rewarding, recognizing your people, if you're not utterly exhausted from doing that, you haven't done it enough. And the reason for that is, one, a lot of these people are products of helicopter parents, and they have gotten those participation trophies. That doesn't mean you have to give them, but you've got to at least show them that you've got to overly kind of communicate those recognitions and those rewards throughout the day and create creative ways to do that. But, you look at even, I use the example of this company out in San Francisco, which is a ridiculous example, but they don't give any money away to their employees. It doesn't have to be a money. It doesn't have to be a coin in, kind of the military. We actually have a change award at our company, which is a big gold coin, which is inspired from some of the things that the military does. But they actually have a big blue 10-foot rooster on wheels that they take over to the employee of the month. That is essentially their salesperson of the month. They will drag the big blue rooster over to that person's desk, and it'll sit there for that full month. They also play that person's at-bat song while blue sirens go off, and they make a big announcement about it. So I talk about some of these things, but I do think that there's a lot to look at the military for things that they do really well that I think a lot of people can learn from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it has evolved quite a bit we just recently, the last organization I worked in, and this was true at the Navy SEALs and in my organization, which was a medical hospital, we got into the Arbinger Institute, and literally purchased millions of dollars worth of books. And I became a lead the leader facilitator. And that's more talking about this type of stuff, the customer recognition, getting to see people as people, not as employees, not as products and stuff like this. There's one word that the older generation of military, the senior guys, absolutely despised and had a hard time getting used to, and many still haven't, that they'll get from the younger generation when giving an order. And that one word is why. Because the younger generation, they ask questions. I just told my 9-year-old yesterday, he's always asked, what does that mean? What does this word mean? Why do you do that? I told him, you ask a lot of questions. Never stop asking
That's
questions.
Awesome.
Never. And if he ever does join the military, like my oldest one is, he's going to drive some people crazy.
Yeah. No, that's a good point.
I dig it. But there's a time and a place for a question, right?
For sure.
So, brother, we are at the point where we're going to pay it forward. You ready to do that?
Yeah, I love it.
Excellent. So share 1 to 3 actionable steps that men of abundance can take today.
So, one of the big things is take action. And one of the more popular parts of the book, it's actually kind of far in the book and not even a chapter heading, but it's this idea of turning let's into buy when. And there's nothing more. I think we live in a very unaccountable culture. I think a lot of people fail to take action. And so when you get an email, and this started from a frustration of mine with a bunch of the millennial employees around my life, and when it starts with let's do this, let's do that, and then nothing happens. And so let's means you.
Yeah,
exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Let's
or one of you.
But even in your social life, let's grab coffee, let's grab a drink, and nothing ever happens. So immediately, and I encourage everyone listening, try this. Next time someone says that, you immediately answer with buy when. And you're either going to find that they didn't even really want to grab coffee or a drink with you, or you'll see yourself a week later hanging out with that person and you'll be surprised at the fact that it actually happened because you answered let's with a by when. So I think that's one key point. I think the next piece is that that this idea of the 70-30 rule, or what I also call my sit in your car rule, which is if 2 days in a row you're going into that your work and you have this massive sense of dread, and it's not associated to your own procrastination or your own pushing yourself to actually develop. Everyone knows what I'm talking about, but 2 days in a row, then something's got to change and take action on that change. And I tell every single one of my employees that, and I can tell, people are like, Chris, how do you let go of employees? I'm like, I have an honest conversation with them. And I say, are you happy? Are you passing the sit in your car rule? And most of the time they'll say, no, I'm not happy. It's like, okay, well, let me help you find something that's more in line with what you're looking for. And then my last piece and takeaway would be, I think life should be a ruthless pursuit of passions. And I think that, and mine is, my passion point is bringing more connection and love and empathy in the world. I don't think we have near enough of it. I think it's why we're seeing things the way that we're seeing it. But my big part, we've all got to, I think, start following more of that instinct and fueling our passions. And so allow your people to embrace their side hustles, find your own side hustle. And, I think the best is yet to come. So I get really excited about what's happening out there. And I think the world's a beautiful place. And I think it's about how you look at it. That's the key piece.
Yeah, I totally agree. What rituals make the biggest impact in your life other than what you've already mentioned?
So what's funny is, I've started workout 3 mornings a week. And so I get up at 4:55 Monday, Wednesday, Friday. But that was a product of me hanging out with a guy by the soccer field. And I said, dude, you look like you're in like really good shape. You like, I can tell like how much faster, blah, 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 you're running. I see you sprinting by the house. Like, what are you doing? He was like, oh, I go to the gym. And he was like, you should check out this gym and trainer I'm working with. I said, by when? He goes, Tuesday, 4:55. I'm like, all right, I'll be there. And then that changed everything. So I think some of those things are really impactful. I mean, for me, I think we all have our demons. We all have a vice or two. And I would encourage everyone to take a long, deep look at that. And, for me, the 3 best decisions I've ever made in my life was marrying my wife, having children, and then quitting drinking. And that for me was such a big, impactful move that I would challenge everyone to look deep within themselves as to what those things might look like for them.
Excellent. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. Other than your book, what are you reading or listening to that you'd recommend to our abundant leaders, and why? So
right now, I was on a radio show recently with Jay and Catherine Wolf, and she had a stroke 11 years ago, is half paralyzed, and they have this amazing viewpoint of the world. So I just started. I'm actually going to be hanging out with them in a week, and I hate when people meet up with other authors and they don't read the book. So I'm reading that book right now, and it's actually very inspirational. And then I read a lot of novels as well. So Shantaram is one of my more recent ones. I was told that if I read Shantaram, I'd actually maybe want to go visit India. And I read Shantaram, and not only it almost made me want to go visit India, but more than anything, it taught me a lot about people and love. And there's a lot of great messages in there. And then I'll be reading and helping Tommy edit Legendary. So that'll be, I think, the next one that's on the to-do list, which I should be diving into sometime next week. And I'll be writing the foreword of that, considering he wrote the foreword of mine. So
awesome. That sounds exciting. I'm looking forward to that as well.
Awesome.
What do you feel holds most people back from living a life of true abundance?
I think taking action. I think, and Tommy has taught me this the best. And he says a lot of these things, not only does your foundation have to be built on gratitude, but a lot of these things that we need to do in life or work on are muscles, and we got to flex that muscle every single day. And I think we focus on the champagne moments versus the ride and those small things. And I think it's with the small things that everything else follows and has this ripple effect on. So whether it be getting up and going for that run, or working out in the morning, or changing something within ourselves or habits, I think it all starts with these small things that we flex on a daily basis. And when it starts to come into place, it's an amazing thing. I obviously benefit from having Tommy as a very close friend and coach for me. So he's taught me a lot of those things.
Excellent. Yeah, great guy to learn from for sure. What does being a man of abundance mean to you?
I think giving back is one of the big things, and walking the talk. So giving back to the world, to those around us. And then making sure that we're following the things that we're saying out there and being examples for children and next generations to learn from.
Excellent. I appreciate that, man. Hey, we're going to have the millennialwhisperer.com linked up in the show notes. How else would you like for our listeners to get a hold of you? And before I let you go, what else did we not talk about that you want to ensure that our abundant leaders get out of our conversation today?
Well, I mean, I think this has been an awesome conversation, and I've gotten a lot of the great tidbits in that I like to get in, but more than anything, it's a real conversation. And I appreciate, Wally, what you're doing and the message that you're bringing. I think we need this. We need more Wallies in the world. So big props to you for doing what you're doing. For the book, it's actually, it's available everywhere. Buy it on Amazon. The audiobook is out now with me saying it, and Tommy's doing the foreword. And then any really bookstore should have it by now. We're in every airport as of Saturday, so that's exciting. And then if you actually want to just download the first chapter, we've set up a link for everyone listening. And so if you go to themillennialwhisperer.com, and millennial spelled with 2 L's and 2 N's, Millennial Whisperer, themillennialwhisperer.com, and then /abundance, you can download the first chapter. And we've also created a millennial leadership assessment, so you can actually see what type of millennial leader you are. So check that out. And that's for everyone listening. So,
man, that's awesome. I greatly appreciate that, man. I'll be checking that out myself as well. Guys, we'll have all of that linked up in the show notes. Chris, it's been an awesome conversation. I greatly appreciate your time. I love what you're doing, man. Go out, live your life of abundance, and keep paying it forward.
Thanks, man.
All right, guys. So that was a very interesting conversation, to say the least, at least from my perspective. I always like having these conversations in reference to the generation gaps, or at least the ideas that there's a generation gap in the workplace and how people react to different situations in the workplace and in their personal lives. So I just challenge you to take a closer look at this. Take a look at your leadership position, your leadership style. How are you integrating everyone in your workplace, in your business, or even within your community, and how you're interacting with people out on your daily activities? Get away from the idea of prejudging people based on their age, or even how they look, the color of their skin, or any other differences that may stand out. I assure you that most people will be able to contribute in various ways in your life and in your business if you just get to know them a little bit more and find out what motivates them. Now, go out and live your life of abundance, and make sure to pay it forward.
That's all for today, Abundance Leaders. For more about our guests and the powerful information we shared with you today, be sure to sign up for our mailing list at menofabundance.com. We appreciate your time and look forward to hanging out with you on our next episode. So until then, be sure to pay it forward and live your life of abundance.